Hello everybody, this is me quarantined in my castle. Before we left school, we drew a castle with some shapes and then we didn't get to finish it. So we're going to redraw that castle, not difficult, and then we'll get to paint it and finish it all up. You guys come on inside, let's see what's going on. Okay, just to review how we drew the castle. We started with a ground line, just a little bit above the bottom. Remember, this little guy, that ground line is too high on the picture and it doesn't go all the way to the edges. So we put that ground line. Then we started with a square. We made it come up at least halfway on the paper. Put a square in the middle, leaving a space at both sides. Our next shape was a rectangle. One rectangle on one side. Notice how we attached the rectangle to the square. One rectangle on the other side. The next shape was another line. Then we worked with a triangle. We made the triangle go on top of the rectangle up to a point. Remember, triangles have points on them. Up to a point. Then we made some lines across here with a pattern. Over, down, over, up. Over, down, over, up. Over, down, over, up, over, down, over. Then in the center, we started another square, nice and big, but on the top of this square, we made an arch. Okay? And then we did it again and made an arch. We made bricks inside this doorway. We started off with one brick in the center and then just put 1, 2, 3 lines down the side. 1, 2, 3 lines down the side. Not too many. We imitated this shape on our towers for our nice tall windows. There we go. And then to give the castle some depth, we put more towers in the back. You could have one here. Remember, we talked about how they did not have to be the same height. It makes it a little bit more interesting to make them different heights and different sizes. And finally, on the shortest tower, we made a flag with another rectangle. There we go. So now our castle fills this paper space and we are ready to move on to the next step. Our next step was to carefully outline the castle with a black oil pastel. This makes the lines show up a lot better and it will give the watercolor paint a little bit of a resist up against that waxy line so that one space doesn't bleed into the space next to it. Okay, this is what we did in school. So now I think we're all caught up. We're going to add just a couple more things here. One, I like to put a door going into my castle, so I'm going to just divide that line in half. I could even put maybe some handles on there if I want to. And then on the roofs, I like to give it some texture. And I use a U shape for the texture on the roofs. We've done this before on other projects, like feathers on birds. And this just gives the rooftop a little bit of texture and interest. You'll notice also I added some lines onto the towers to make them look like they're made out of blocks or bricks. Not too many. Remember to keep it super simple. And then we'll be ready to paint. So now we're ready to paint our castle. And we're going to use watercolor paints. I've already put a little bit of water in each color to soften it, so I'm ready to paint. We're going to paint the whole entire castle, but not worry about the background since we're going to cut it out later. In fact, if you go outside the lines a little bit, that's going to be okay because we're going to cut that out. On this castle, you can put pretty much any color in there you wish. So, we can just make the door green. We can make all kinds of creative colors in this castle. The oil pastel or crayon is going to really give us a good blockade or resist from one color to the other. I'm going to rinse this off, dab it on a paper towel, and then go to the next color. On these bricks around the door, I might even create a little pattern there, just to give it some interest. And I'm going to paint all around my whole castle with these watercolor paints to make them look so interesting. I can't wait to see what you come up with. We've painted our castle and everything is full of some kind of color. The flags, the windows, all these shapes. There's no white space showing inside the castle. We're going to let this dry for about an hour and then we can cut out the white spots. Cut the castle out from the background. So let's let that dry. That looks great. Okay, everything's nice and dry. All right, and so now I'm going to cut out my castle. I want to cut on that black line. I would rather not cut outside the line and leave a big white space. And I also don't want to cut into my castle. I spent a lot of time on that. So I'm going to cut right on the line. Go nice and slow. Remember, the slower you go, the more accurate you can be with your cutting. And just cut all along those lines. Take your time. This is where people tend to leave a lot of that white space on there, on the outside edges. So go ahead and cut that off as you cut out your castle. The hardest part to cut out is going to be the flag because you have to cut down one side of the pole and then up the other side of the pole. I would leave a little bit of space there just to make sure. And if your flag gets cut off your castle, then just save it and you can glue it back down onto the paper when we glue down the whole castle. So it won't be totally lost. See, I'm going to cut up here but stop just short of that line and then cut down that way. So you can see it's super flimsy and it can still fall off pretty easily. But I'm going to be really careful with it. And if it does fall off, I'll glue it back down. It's not going to be a big deal. Okay, so it's all cut out. And now I am ready to glue it down onto the background. You can see how that flag is going to be really flimsy. So I'm going to be super careful with that. Now I'm going to decide what color to use. Sometimes these look absolutely terrific on a yellow background. But try some different things and see what you think. Like here I have a brown. That would be nice. Or maybe even a green. Although I'm kind of losing that green flag on the green background. I might skip that one. I have a blue. Or even a red. so I can decide which background to glue it onto. Then I'm going to flip it over and put glue all around the edges of my castle. Not right on the edge, because we know that it'll ooze out the sides and make a big mess, but just inside of all the edges on my castle. All right, I put glue all over the back of my castle, but I did not do the back of the flag. I know that flag is going to flip around a lot, so I'm going to wait and do that last. This is where I'll use my pincher fingers. I'm going to hold the castle above my paper to make sure it's nice and centered, and then slowly put it down, and then just push it to the paper. I don't want to smear it because that oil pastel will smear all over the place, but I'm just going to gently push it down onto the paper. Now I can take the flag and I can turn it over and touch my glue bottle and just put a little bit of glue on the back of it and flip it back and get it right into place. Now I like to put some heavy books on it so that it really stays down nice and tight until it dries, but then it'll be ready to go. It looks terrific. I'm sure your castles look terrific. If you have a little bit of extra time, maybe you can make a fancy little crown like I did. I'd love to see your pictures. Send them whenever you can. Bye-bye.